All right. So, continuing from yesterday, we are going to be looking at the spread of Islam this time. All right, so let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, so the Caliphs. So these are the successors of Muhammad after he had passed away. So they're the guys who would be in charge, like one after the other after Muhammad. So they are going to be trying to fulfill Muhammad's goal of spreading Islam. So they're going to want to spread it beyond just the Arabian Peninsula. They are wanting to spread it to all peoples. So this religion spreads like a wildfire. It just moves very fast. People are like converting to it quickly. Some people are being forced to convert to it, and you know it just grows very rapidly and expands very rapidly. Armies are sweeping across into different and new areas. They're going against the Byzantines. They are a well, the Byzantines, they are basically the descendants of the Eastern Roman Empire after the Roman Empire was split into two, if you remember that from last year. So the Byzantines, they are just slowly weakening and losing power over their territory. So they're just getting to be a smaller and smaller kingdom. And the Persians as well were around at this time again. They just seem to pop up every once in a while. And these Arab forces, they are eating away at the territory of the Byzantines and the Persians and bringing the majority of them under Muslim control. Now, there are a couple of reasons why the Arab armies were able to do this. One of them being, of course, they were united in the belief that it was their duty to Allah to spread Islam. And that since they are a growing power, if they keep being on the offensive, and the fact that all these other empires that they're eating away at have been around and fighting for a lot longer, they're weaker, so they're easier pickings. All right, now, people from persecuted religions in those empires were welcomed into like the Muslim controlled territory. Like people, they could still practice religions that they wanted to, but there would just be like a tax on it. So like, hey, if you want to practice, being Jewish, that's fine. You just need to pay us, $500 a year. Something like that is how we would equate it today, I guess. All right, moving on. Now, the Berbers. This is another Islamic group. They were the North Africans. They are going to sweep into Europe through Spain, and they're going to hold on to territory there for a long time, and they're going to even push their way into France. And as you can see in that map at the bottom, if you look at the bottom left of the picture of the map, that little lightly shaded area, that is northeastern Spain, and those arrows are showing basically where they were able to get to. Like they got like almost 2/3 of the way up into France before they were finally turned back at the Battle of Tours by Charles Martel, known as the Hammer, because like he stopped them in their tracks. It's like boom, no further. All right, very important battle to remember: the Battle of Tours, where the Muslim forces were stopped and their conquests into Western Europe. All right, this map right here, it's going to show the like periods of expansion of the Muslim influence in the world. So starting in Saudi Arabia with the darkest, then we move into more that pinky area in the years after Muhammad. And then the next period of time, which is, roughly 50 years after Muhammad. Well, actually, it'd be more like 30 years after Muhammad. We get the goldish color. That's like the biggest like hold, like they locked into this territory and they controlled it for a long time. A lot of influence, a lot of spread of Muslim culture and religion in these areas. All right, Moving on. The fourth caliph, his name was Ali. He was murdered in 661, and then we get the ascension of the Umayyad dynasty. Now, this is where a very big split happens in Islam. So Ali, these are the Ali and the people before him. They were descendants of Muhammad, and there's now going to be strife between the people who follow the bloodline of Muhammad and the people who follow the Umayyads. All right, so this is how we get the Sunni and the Shiite divide. Okay, so the Sunni, they believe that the Caliph is just the leader and is just like the leader of the people, is not the religious authority. And the Shiite, they were the ones who followed Ali and his son Hussein, believing that they are the spiritual people, the leaders, and should only be the descendants of Muhammad. All right, and just to show, see the percentages there at the bottom. 90% of Muslims approximately are Sunni, and roughly 10% are Shiite. There is a very big divide there. So most Muslims that you would meet, or Muslim countries you'll see on a map, are predominantly Sunni, and there are just pockets of Shiite in these areas. Okay? All right, here's some images that tie into the expansion and everything. All right. Now, Hussein and Ali, there are like some religious festivals that are held like to commemorate them, and they basically are just doing a remembrance, kind of like how we have like Christmas where you're supposed to, remember Christ. They have a similar type of thing going on to remember Ali and Hussein. Okay, it's just some more, ties into some religious stuff that's not actually blood. It would be, well, for some of them it is, yes. Some of those guys really are cutting themselves. All right, it is a religious thing, so like, don't get too crazy about it. All right. Now, this chart will help simplify things a little bit. Sunni, 90%, and they believe that caliphs should be elected into power. They don't have to be a part of a certain bloodline. And Shiite, they're the lower percentage, and they believe caliphs should be related to Muhammad. Easy way to remember right there, just having that info. Okay. Now, the Umayyads, they take control in 661, and they're in power for basically the next 90 years. And they moved the capital from Medina, that city that was north of Mecca by about 200 miles. They moved it to Damascus, which is in Syria, which is near Israel or Jerusalem. Now, so the Umayyads, they're going to be one of the biggest driving forces in the big boom of expansion. Now, we're going to get a lot of strong government leaders. We're going to get strong states and kingdoms under the Umayyads. Okay? Now, they're going to unite a lot of this into like one big empire, and there's going to be things that they use to tie that together, especially being language, which would be Arabic. We're going to get a unified currency. So no matter where you are in the Muslim world at this time, you use the same money. They're going to have a road system that's going to make travel a lot easier. And they actually have one of the better postal type systems that we see before like the modern way of doing things. So they actually have like devoted postal service. All right. Now, the Umayyads, while they did a lot of good stuff, there is going to be some issues with the non-Arab Muslims, especially when we get into the eastern territories where we get like Iraq and Persia. So think Iraq and Iran today. All right. Now, these guys are going to join forces with the anti-Umayyad factions, and they're going to overwhelm the Umayyad forces, and they're going to start their own dynasty called the Abbasids. And this is where we get a more modern addition to Baghdad, the capital of Iraq. Now, this would be like the old part of Baghdad today. Now, the Abbasids, they're under Caliph Harun al-Rashid, and they developed a very sophisticated urban way of living, and they are going to incorporate a lot of the diversity that they have with their people, and we're going to see a lot of lands being controlled under the Abbasids as well as the like we got with the Umayyads. All right. So that is where we're going to stop for today. And we will be continuing tomorrow.